You'll be great.
Number of things.
It's giving me a check mark on our YouTube page, and it looks like we have a check mark on Facebook. So I'm just going to double check that we're actually live. I intentionally waited a couple of minutes today so that people can be anxiously awaiting us. Oh. And if you are seeing us and can hear us fine, go ahead and start giving us that thumbs up so we see you on here with us, and give us a comment or two so that we know that you are tuned in.
Yes, I'm here.
Right, I'm here. We're all here. Oh, awesome. So it looks like we have both Counselor Scully and Counselor Seymour with us. We also have one of our small business owners or partners with us. That's Parker Brown. Parker, I owe you a quick email/phone call. Thank you, Counselor Scully, for commenting already and being the first to hop on here with us. We have a series of other comments that I'll go ahead and pull up as I'm doing our basic housekeeping. For those of you that are just now tuning into our Facebook page, haven't maybe seen us before, we are here on a daily basis bringing content to educate, inform, and provide those resources to our entire business community and overall residential community. I am your host, Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and I am pleased to actually bring today's broadcast to you. Before we actually hop into that, you know that I like doing some housekeeping. So if you've landed on our page for the very first time today, please make sure that you do hit that like button, hit the notification button as well so that you can get alerted when we go live. But also find us on other social media platforms. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Westy Chamber, and we're also on YouTube as well, where this is simultaneously broadcast. And then finally, we have a resource hub where we have all the COVID information that we've been able to gather, city, county, from our partners, funding, you name it. That webpage is actually already typed into our comment section of this broadcast. Now, you've seen me quickly go through a lot of these comments, and you're probably like, oh my gosh, why is she doing this? She's being so distracting. One, I want to give shout outs because I love seeing who's on here with us. So quick shout out to Wayne Anderson. Thank you also for hopping on here with us as well. But the second reason is to let you know that you have the ability to have your comment and or question displayed on our screen. To do that, please make sure that while our speaker is speaking, you type that into the chat box. Let us know your comment, maybe what you've learned or picked up out of this broadcast, or if you have a question that you want us to address, we're happy to take those at the very end of the broadcast. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce a very good friend of mine, also a partner of ours at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. John Gonzalez and I have known each other, I want to say about a decade, nearly a decade now. And we've crossed paths so many times that it's embarrassing that we are not just speed dialed by now. But he has decided to take a few minutes out of his day to spend it with us to share, what is the U.S. Chamber doing? What have they done as soon as COVID unfolded? Maybe some things that they have in the works right now. And then a very unique program that they have been kicking off that we are proud to support and get behind that really addresses a social issue right now that's incredibly important. So with that, I'm going to mute myself and turn this over to John to share a few words with us.
Happy Friday, Juliette. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you. First let me say thank you to you. Thank you to your board, your volunteers for all the great work you're doing for your members and the Westminster community. Local and state chambers have been on the front lines of this historic pandemic and economic struggle, working with local, state, federal officials daily. So small businesses are making real-time decisions based on the information you are providing. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your partnership with the U.S. Chamber. As we continue to review the ongoing legislation, regulations, and ever-changing policy guidelines. I want to begin today with a brief quote from our VP of Small Business Policy, Tom Sullivan. This was just a few weeks ago, and he said, quite simply, we view local chambers of commerce and civic groups as the economic emergency rooms for businesses throughout the country. These are nonprofits that have hosted SBA officials, elected members of Congress, CDC officials, public health experts, unemployment experts, and others to help business communities survive. Providing PPP funding to local chambers would extend a much needed lifeline to businesses around the country, end quote. And I'm sure you and everybody on that call, on the call today, would agree to that statement. Tom is a great guy and doing a fantastic job. So as we continue with your help to make chambers of commerce eligible for PPP loans under the CARES Act, we continue to work, as you know, with the House and Senate to get this done. It's in motion, but we got to keep working on it. As you know, the House and Senate passed a bill that was signed by the president on June 5th, making some very, very good improvements to the Paycheck Protection Program in an effort to give small businesses more opportunities to maximize their loan forgiveness. So I think we're all for that, but the bureaucracy makes it sometimes very difficult. Additionally, it's important to remember that a PPP borrower doesn't go to the SBA to get to Treasury for their loan forgiveness. They go back to the original lender that they worked with when they received their actual PPP loan. So just really brief highlights on that bill that was passed just a little more than a month ago. It's the Flexibility Act. It extends the loan terms from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. It lowers the percentage of loan proceeds that must be used for payroll from 75 down to 60. It extended the deadline to restore full-time employees and payroll from June 30th to December 31st, and then setting the repayment term for loans made after June 4th at 5 years. So you have that option to stretch it out for 5 years. So we view the loan forgiveness process, really it's three-step process. The first step is determine the maximum amount of possible loan forgiveness, and that's based on what you, the borrower, spent in the 24 weeks after the loan was made. The second step is determine how much of that maximum amount of loan forgiveness will be reduced based on certain characteristics within your business, namely the number of employees that you have relative to a reference period and the level of wages that you are paying your employees. And finally, the third step is a general rule that requires that 60% of your total loan forgiveness amount be dedicated to payroll expenses. Well, SBA and Treasury continue to update their policies and guidelines, so be mindful of that. But also, just to note that we are, among with others, not just the U.S. Chamber, a lot of other groups, we're working with SBA. We're trying to make loan forgiveness as simple and easy as possible. So we are encouraging them, and we continue to encourage them to help these small business owners calculate their forgiveness amount. So the easier they can do that, like a TurboTax application, the less strain it would be on the small business. And we've asked them, don't hold your breath on this one, but we've asked them, and many others have asked SBA to go ahead and just make any loan, any PPP loan that was made below $250,000 to just automatically make that a grant. As complicated as everything is, and under the circumstances, I think that may be a smart idea. And we continue to encourage them to do that. We'll see what happens. But speaking of PPP updates, as you guys probably know, starting just this Monday of this week, Congress and the president extended the program for first-time applicants of the PPP loan to August 8th. So if you hesitated at first, you think it's a good idea, you think it's going to be very helpful, maybe even started the process and it got too complicated, you now have until August 8th to go ahead and get that loan approved. Now, the Senate has been working, just an update on phase 4. A lot of people are calling it CARES Act 2. We can still expect completion by late July, probably maybe the first week of August, to have that bill completed and signed into law. There is no doubt it's going to include liability protection or safe harbor for healthcare workers, business owners, and employees from lawsuits pertaining to the COVID outbreak. Leader McConnell has emphasized that there was not going to be any more legislation passed without some form of safe harbor or liability protection. So we know that's going to be included. A few other items, I'm not going to go into a big detail. This is still in the works. As you know, Congress is still out. They return July 20th. So there's plenty of time to encourage your member of Congress to do the right thing. But a few other items that they're going to look at is surprise billing, unemployment reform, and then funding state and local governments. So as the Senate continues to work on this legislation, so we all need to continue contacting our elected officials to assist them as this legislation moves forward. One last thing on PPP forgiveness. U.S. Chamber created a video. It's about 25 minutes long, and it walks you through the loan forgiveness process, and it answers some of the most frequent questions that we get from businesses regarding forgiveness. So both that and the materials we have on our website. So if the guide, updated guide, and this little 25-minute webinar, you can go to at uschamber.com/PPP forgiveness. And I'll, of course, I know, Juliet, you have all this great information, but if there's something that for some reason you don't have, just let me know and we'll get it to you. And finally, and maybe not finally, I may come up with a few more things to say, but as you know, back on June 25th, the U.S. Chamber hosted a national town hall as part of an ongoing initiative to address inequality of opportunity through education, employment, entrepreneurship, and criminal justice reform. What we've been saying for a while now is all Americans should have equal opportunity to earn their success, rise on their merit, and live their own American dream. But that's not always the case today for many. So far too often, the opportunity to obtain an education, secure a job, start a business, or provide for your family is determined by the color of your skin. So these systemic inequalities hurt individuals, communities, and our economy, and especially our society. So through our Equity of Opportunity Initiative that we rolled out on June 25th, we will develop and advance data-driven business and policy solutions to bridge opportunity gaps and ensure that Black Americans and people of all color have a greater opportunity to success. I mean, we believe at the Chamber, and I know you as well, we believe that the business community can serve as a catalyst for addressing these longstanding systemic challenges. I mean, I think, together, the Chamber community, the business community, we can advance a quality of opportunity agenda and ensure that all Americans have the opportunity to learn their success, to earn their success and rise on their merit and live their own American dream. So the Chamber will provide what we're working on now, and we just released yesterday, just yesterday morning. We provided draft legislation to guide the federal policy discussion and support legislative efforts that address the goals of the equality of opportunity agenda. And at the local and state level, Chamber will look to its federation partners like you all, and state local chambers, our members, as well as our other business associations and agencies, policymakers, to advance legislative action and enact the agenda's stated policy changes. And real briefly, the focus of this, and I think everybody could agree on this, and we're going to drill down at each one of these levels, but education, employment, entrepreneurship, and criminal justice reform. As you may recall, there was a big federal justice reform bill that was signed a couple of years ago by President Trump, and it was a very bipartisan. We're so proud of Congress for a bipartisan piece of legislation that reformed our criminal justice system at the federal level. It was years in the works, but it was a very bipartisan bill that the president signed about 2 years ago, and that's a great framework. But that was at a federal level, and so we need to continue to work at the state and local level. You can, if you want, you can view our equity of opportunity agenda if you just go to uschamber.com/equality-agenda. You will get the download on everything that we were talking about when we released released a lot of this information yesterday morning, and we're continuing to follow up. We're not going to drop the ball on this one. It's just too important to the country and the business community. One more item. We sent a letter to just about everyone in Washington, D.C. at multiple levels just last week, stating, for the sake of public health and our economy, we were requesting that the White House Coronavirus Task Force and the National Governors Association work together, Congress, everyone work together to establish guidance on the appropriate metrics, e.g. positive tests and hospitalization, for imposing local location-based mandatory mask requirements in all public spaces. We asked them to also develop a model mandatory mask policy that are simple and do not impose the enforcement burden on organizations without such expertise, such as a business or a nonprofit. So we wanted to make clear that businesses and nonprofits will not be held liable for refusing entry or services to an individual who is not complying with face covering requirements. And to be clear, the decision to impose face covering requirements should remain at the state and local level, but be informed by clear and consistent guidance based on data. We believe that a national mask standard should be implemented, and for as a framework. I mean, right now we've got businesses being sued because they're not allowed, or they're making or asking customers to wear a mask, and then they're getting sued when they don't make customers wear a mask. So if we had a national standard, I think that would be best for all of our the business community, chamber community, all nonprofits. So with that, I don't want to go on and on and on. I will turn it back to you. Happy to take questions. Again, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your partnership on our Equality of Opportunity initiative. And I look forward to your questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John. You shared quite a bit of information. We actually had several people hop on, and I love to do shout outs. So quick shout out to Councilor Bowles. Thank you for coming on with us. Julie Cantwell. It looks like we also have Jason Gank. Good morning to you, Jason. Crystal Sidler, and Lauren Seymour, Joshua Dutton, and several others. If I've missed you, I apologize. Councilor DeMai, I also saw you as well. If you're just hopping on with us, we have John Gonzalez from the U.S. Chamber. John is a regional director covering not only Colorado, but numerous other states across the U.S. He has talked on a variety of things, including the PPP program, what that looks like in terms of loan forgiveness and legislation that they have been actively working on to support our businesses that are trying to apply or have applied and are getting to the point of that 3-month period. He also touched on other things like social issues, for example, that we're facing across the nation, I want to say, and the Equality Summit that we held back in June the 25th. There was a question that we had received from Councilor Scully about this, and that was whether or not the town hall was available recorded and posted somewhere to view. We did include the link into this broadcast for the agenda, and if I'm not mistaken, John, on that website as well, they have the access to actually seeing the meeting that took place.
Yes, that was a 2-hour public meeting that you can watch.
And it was, we tuned in, having supported this, we're not just signing off our name on things. We definitely tuned into this, and they had a lot of business leaders in there. There was very substantial dialogue that was there, looking at how do we attract people in terms of workforce, what can we do as it relates to education. So I do encourage you all to take an opportunity in a moment to reach that. And then John also touched on one of the more heated or contentious items, which is the masks. Right. But what I loved most about you touching on this was the business component, because what we're facing is when both sides are arguing at the very end, there's always the business that's impacted one way or another, whether they are trying to turn people away. Heck, we've heard stories from businesses that have done that. And then they had, a mom and her son call the news, and said, we were just discriminated against. We're Black. We were kicked out from the store, and, this is not right. When in reality, it was the business trying to uphold the mandate that they have to wear a mask in the business. Instead, what ended up happening was this negative publicity. I think over 37,000 reviews that came back on that business immediately after that. And so it creates this situation of not only a liability, but also making it impossible for a business to actually survive, even with the conditions that we have with COVID. So it'll be nice to see, what balance we can have. How can we address the liability component and still be able to have our businesses operate? Several, especially during the reopening phase, have started doing the sign a waiver, or, here's our policy. And they're doing that not so much so that it can turn around your information and give it to other people, because I've seen the hesitant from people to sign that. They're doing that because they don't want to do business with someone and then have that customer turn around and, link back to that business. It's because of them that I contracted this or had this happen. So it's nice to know that you all are working nationally. And I loved the quote that you started with, John, from Tom, sharing about how chambers are here really, we're always around, especially during the moments of disaster. And exactly what you shared, we're here and we're helping as best as we can, but we also are cut off from any support of our own. So it's kind of a catch-22 when we're responsible for supporting our businesses, but our longevity as well is hurting. So I wanted to note that as well. If you have comments or questions that you are interested in Tom answering, please, or in John answering, sorry, I'm still holding on to that quote. It was just so great. But if you had any questions or comments for John to go ahead and ask, type it into the comment section of this broadcast. Tina did share. That's a big help. Thank you. I know she's referencing the SBA and PPP activity that the U.S. Chamber is engaged in, but more importantly, the video that you all have released that's 25 minutes long that touches on the simplicity of going through that loan forgiveness process. So we do get a lot of information from the U.S. Chamber, and we'll post that on our Westminster Chamber COVID page. If there's ever information that you don't see, please ping us. And I know John sends me that stuff. We'll include the U.S. Chamber page as well. We want you to get as much correct information as possible. We also had a comment come through, it looks like thought we had one, from Councillor DeMott, also touching on, this was right after you were sharing about this past Monday in Congress and the President extending the program for the first round for the applicants. So good information for our business community to know as well. So in terms of, we've been working on a lot of things, and sometimes people don't see a lot of what we're doing advocacy-wise, even with our partner, the U.S. Chamber. And so we attempt to partner where we can on things and information share. So if I were to ask you, and it's just mainly, it looks like we don't have any questions right now, so this is me asking you some questions. If I were to ask you, what some of the other key items that we were looking at, infrastructure reform was a huge one. The USMCA was another one that we were all really pushing hard on and got that finally through and moved. What other efforts have we collectively focused on that might be beneficial for people to know?
Well, I think right now, yes, the House did their work and got a major transportation bill passed. Unfortunately, we could not be supportive of that bill because it was so partisan. And what we've been trying to say now for 2 years is we need more bipartisanship. And then we saw a bill that was that had a lot of great legislative language in there. We supported many of the phases and sections of that bill, but in the end, it turned out to be extremely partisan with no pay-fors either. And so I don't think any Republicans voted for it. Maybe one, I'm not sure. But and so that's, we can kind of put that aside for now. It's going to come back up again. So be ready for that. Right now, I think it's got to be the focus on the Senate and CARES 2.0, CARES Act 2.0, or Phase 4 that the Senate is working on. Like I said, Congress, House and Senate, they're in recess right now till July 20th. Then the House goes out for August recess on July 31st. The Senate will remain in DC for about one more week. I think they adjourn on August 7th. So literally, when they get back starting July 20th, we're going to have 2 weeks, in a sense, 2 weeks for the House, 3 weeks for the Senate to get this next Phase 4 CARES 2.0 passed. And anything you can do, you as a chamber, your business, your businesses, to reach out to your senators, let them know what they like, don't like, what needs to be included. There are a number of things that we're waiting to see. Besides liability, we think that's probably the key. The most important thing right now is this temporary liability form or safe harbor for businesses and others, healthcare workers, hospitals, schools, because without that, I think the business community can't be healthy if we're not healthy. So we need to get there as quickly as possible. So continue to contact your members of Congress, let them know what works or what doesn't work or what you'd like to see added to this bill, because it is going to pass. There's no doubt it's going to pass, and we just want to make sure it's the best possible bill.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point that you mentioned. We had our state legislature had reconvened for a short period of time, and then they kind of went ahead and adjourned. And during that time, there were a number of bills. There had an idea behind them, definitely, but it was to the detriment of business. And one of those, I'm glad to say, did not pass all the way through. It related to the unemployment component of people that are working in those, whether it's your police officers, your frontline people that are there, your healthcare workers, your essential workers. And so you're looking at, we're trying to keep our economy open, but you are also coming back on the businesses. So I think that's very important for you to know. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Terry Ingmeyer and John Woods, Brian Head and Vanessa DeMont. Thank you so much for coming on here with us as well. John, you shared that we need to communicate with our elected officials, especially at the federal level. And, it's important that we do that at all levels. That's why we advocate at city, state, and federal level through our chamber. We partner with you all nationally, since I can't be there, to make sure that you guys are boots on the ground, that the Business Roundtable is as well, and several other key folks. And I'm glad to say, some of our district representatives, whether it's Congressman Perlmutter and his series of town halls, or Senator Gardner just a couple of days ago, really got together that call to make sure that all chambers in the state of Colorado had an opportunity to share input and share how do our businesses, what are they facing, what are the needs. And so it's interesting that we did have a comment just now from Tina Franco, and she's sharing, transportation, well, I guess I'll pull this up. It looks like Tina is on a roll with her comments. So transportation should be a bipartisan issue, and the bipartisan policy has several good articles highlighting constitutional support for that. Absolutely, Tina. And I know that was the Infrastructure Modernization Act was one that the U.S. Chamber in the last couple of years has put forward. And we've put out letters of support alongside them to get officials to really put that as a priority item. But this one in specific was the one I was looking for. The financial information about SBA loans is great, but let's open up the economy. So one of the comments really that came up on Senator Gardner's call was, we do need that support. We need that immediate support for our businesses. What does that look like long-term wise? How are we going to recoup as a country and really move forward? Because all of what we're infusing right now will catch up at some point. And I think his response to that touches a little bit to what Tina's sharing, and that's, we need economic growth. We need our businesses to be able to open back and keep going. And I think it's connected, right? It's connected to what you were sharing, John, when you were saying, let's look at nationally, how do we not make it a liability for masks for businesses to be able to enforce or not enforce in their businesses? And if we have precautions in place, then we should also be able to do our businesses as well. Otherwise, those precautions are questionable that we have them at all, right?
Yeah. And it's not giving anybody a free pass. I mean, most businesses, 99, probably 0.9% are trying to do the right thing for their customers. And if there is a business, a school, a hospital that's out there doing the best they can to protect their employees and or their customers, then protecting them from frivolous lawsuits, I think is something that just has to be done. And this is temporary too. It's nothing that's going to last forever. I don't recall what the exact date is, but it's something like through 2024 or 2023, something like that. So it's there to protect the businesses and organizations that are doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And thank you, Vanessa. I know she hopped on and she's sharing. Thank you for the insights and the great points to you, John and Juliet. So we're doing great, but we are out of time, John. I knew it was going to happen with you. We get started on chatting about everything that we can do. And it just, how can you summarize that in a 30-minute? You really can't. We're fortunate to partner with the U.S. Chamber. I love the relationship that I have with John and the team over there. I thank everybody that's tuned in. For those of you that hopped on toward the end of the broadcast, these videos are available for you to find here on the video section of our Facebook page at any point in time. Be sure that you rewind and tune in, binge watch them since it's the weekend, whatever you like. Give us that hashtag replay so we know which ones you like the most and we can bring that content back and be able to share more information. Hello, Jean. Jean, if you remember, John, Jean Terry was on the West site for the U.S. Chamber as well. So good to see him hopped on here. But I digress. So if people want to reach you, what is the best way that they can do so?
My email address, it's so simple. It's just the letter J, Gonzales, so JGONZALES @uschamber.com.
Excellent. So I have typed in John's email into the chat box. I'll go ahead and also pull it up for us, jgonzales@uschamber.com. Please feel free to connect with him, ask him any remaining questions that you might have, or just give him a thank you for spending some of his day with us. And I do appreciate it sincerely. Hopefully we can have you back on here again sometime soon. We will be back here on Monday at 11 a.m. with our mayor, Herb Atchison. So if you have questions city level, or you gained information from here and you're like, no, this should be a local thing that we handle, go ahead and come back on Monday with us. Thank you so much, John. I hope you have an awesome weekend.
Thank you, Juliet.